right now, developmental economist Gbolahan Olojede joins us now to discuss this decision by President Tinubu to cut foreign trips by 60% and what other measures may be needed to reduce the current soaring cost of governance in Nigeria. Many thanks for joining us. Welcome to Newsday.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been nice to be here.
Yes, great. Wonderful. Getting straight into it. Now, this announcement has been met by a mixture of celebration and suspicion. Where do you sit on that spectrum?
Because I so much desire that this should happen, so I'm optimistic that we will actually go the whole hog and make it happen. When you think about COP28, and you can begin to imagine what happened at that event. Federal government said, oh, it was 590. Some people said, oh, it was 420 something. To COP28, begin to do the numbers from the flight cost to accommodation, to Ester code, and you will see probably more than 4 billion down that drain. For what? That's what we like climate rich. If you want to know how much we love climate, then take a drive into the Niger Delta and go and see what is going on there. So that is why, for me, is a step that I expect that the president, when he sits back and watch what happened, will take a measure like he has done.
The fact that you went pigeon, I'm sure that this hits home for you.
Yeah.
So when we saw the removal of fuel subsidy, we know that when the numbers came back, we were told that it was 1.45 trillion that was saved between June and September. But when it came to questions being raised about how the money that was saved was used, it didn't look like it was very transparent. So with this cut by 60% or whatever, how would you like to see accountability and transparency from what might be saved from this gesture?
I think it will be an open wound. When the president goes on any trip, the TV cameras are all over the place, like we saw at COP28. So we'll be able to see by ourselves whether he has maintained what he said he was going to do. If you see all the kind of people following him in COP28, so definitely that's failed. But if by the time you see his next trip, and by the way, members of the media are always there as well, they can tell us whether this is being done or it is not being done. Typically, like the money saved from subsidy, it will of course be retained in the federal government coffers, where it gets shared out as part of what they share, according to the normal distribution ratio to the states and to the government. It also means that we can borrow less if those money are retained in the coffers of the government and we didn't have to waste them on trips that may not be necessary. Yeah, the president has gone on quite a number of trips. He will still be going on some, but we need to move away from those times of 400 people to 20. It will be a great step and we'll save a lot of money.
And you read my mind. Let's talk about trips. In 7 months in office, the president and vice president have visited 16 countries and they've collectively spent 91 days abroad. Of course, the argument is that these trips are bringing in much needed foreign direct investment, so there's a high ROI on it. But looking at the numbers, looking at the state of the nation, realistically speaking, should we be traveling this much? 16 countries in 7 months. Is that really necessary to resuscitate our economy? And is it sustainable?
It's okay to travel, make it modest, spend less. But more importantly, there are certain things that the people you're traveling to meet are looking at. One of it is the kind of jamboree that we had at COP28. So the guys are looking at you talking and they're saying, what you're saying, you're not showing seriousness on the part of how you spend money. See, even lenders look at your habits when they are going to advance money to you. If they see you as someone who just go on the spree, spend it like that, they are cautious about what they advance to you. And if they must, it will come at a slightly higher cost, a premium for the kind of, that is why when you see international organizations like IMF, World Bank, when they're giving you money, they're asking you to make certain reforms. Go out there and stop this. Go out there and stop this. So whatever they consider as bad behavior that will not let their money come back, they want you to go and stop it. So this particular step, are part of what will even make those travels to become more rewarding for us as a country, because the people out there are now looking at you and they see elements of seriousness. The government is not just saying to the people, tighten your belt, but the government itself is tightening its own belt. It sends a very good message to the international community, and it could work in our favor. Or it should work in our favor.
Well, hopefully. But I'd like to ask you about the timing of this announcement. Are you suspicious regarding the timing?
Well, I don't know what to say about it. I'm not suspicious, to be honest.
Okay.
For me, I have been expecting it. In fact, some of the comment that I made on this matter, especially after COP28, was that I'm hoping that the president will watch this on the TV himself, see the volume of people following him, and then he will begin to ask questions. Because, to be honest, he doesn't even know who is coming, who is not coming, apart from maybe his own very close people. But when he watches, he will say, what is going on here? Why are all these people here? And that he will take a step. So maybe he had timed that step to some other event that are beginning to happen. That's a good one. But we will like to see it indeed come to a manifestation in its next trip. That will soon be a next one.
There will be. Now, just let's broaden the scope of the conversation, because there is a lot of focus on the presidency when it comes to austerity. However, let's look at the lawmakers. National Assembly, for example. The budget for the National Assembly this year is the highest in 25 years. Lawmakers will be using 514 billion naira to conduct their business this year. Now, if you just do some quick maths, 25 years, the National Assembly has passed 816 bills in totality, and they've spent 3.1 trillion naira cumulatively over the years. Break it down, that means that it costs 3.8 billion naira to pass one bill in the Assembly. What do we need to do with our lawmakers and their SUVs?
Okay, I will start by saying, look, the man at the very top is the one that dictates the direction. People are watching. So if he's going in this direction, you'll be amazed at what is possible with people under him and even other arms of government, looking at what the president is trying to do, with some sort of emulation. The other part is that those numbers are a bit, they could be challenged. For example, when you're considering a spend when dollar was 400 naira, with a spend when dollar is, I changed $500 yesterday. The credit was 612,000 naira. So when you're comparing the naira value when dollar was 400 with when it is 1,200, you might actually have a triple size in naira, which is the same thing as what it was. Don't forget that a lot of these spends are still in dollars. So if you go and import some expensive SUVs, we don't manufacture those Lexus in Nigeria, they are imported. So we're spending hard dollars to get all those things. But if the president sets the tone, which is what a lot of people have been advocating, he will be sending a strong message, which you drill right down to every corner, and everybody will start to sit up about how we spend money in this country.
Okay. Now, back to what has come out as a result of my timing question. You said maybe some other things have happened.
Yes. Maybe you want to shed light on some of the other things.
There's no problem. We can.
Yeah.
Of course, we know about Better Gate, for instance, and we also know that the ministerial screening, quarterly screening, is taking place this month. As a developmental economist, what metrics would you like to see done with the assessment of the performance of these ministers, so that if we have similar cases of what might have happened, or what is alleged to have been happening in the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs, it actually helps us keep more money in our coffers, like you mentioned earlier.
Okay, I hope that what they are going to be measured with or by will define ab initio. I get involved a lot with performance management issues. And one of the fundamentals is that what I'm going to measure you with, when I'm going to measure you, we must have agreed it. We must know what exactly those should be. I hope that is in place. If it is not, the performance management or measurement that the government is going to do is going to be subjective. However, issues around corruption should definitely come on that plate. Issues around performance. So if I'm a minister for works, my metrics could include things like I'm going to do 100 kilometers of road in each of the 6 geopolitical regions. That is something that is measurable, right? I'm just using arbitrary numbers now. So when we are measuring him, we can ask him, in the Northeast, how many kilometers did you do? We can tick. In the Northwest, how many? And we can do things like that for almost every minister that is there. But if we have not carefully defined what we're going to be measuring, it will be subjective, and we may not be able to make the best out of the circumstance. By the way, talking about performance, the Minister for Interior, who is also enmeshed somehow with some of these issues, is said to be one of the best performing ministers with what it has done with the passport office and the Ministry of Interior. So how do you begin to measure that if you have not defined clearly that corruption is going to be a measure? Of course, they argue that it's not directly involved, but there are issues of ethics as well. So those things must be carefully defined. If they are not, forget it. We aren't getting much out of that performance management.
But if I may, sorry, if I may, when it, like you mentioned now that if these metrics are not in place, it's not going to be anything fruitful. Would you like to see this made public, whatever is the outcome of the assessment?
It would even be nice to even make some of those agreed deliverables public, as well as the kind of engagement that they eventually have with the ministers. Let's say, for example, some ministers get dropped by virtue of this performance measurement. It would be nice to know exactly why they got dropped. So it was because they couldn't meet up to this, or they were found wanting in this area or in that area. It would be nice because it will help the entire system as part of cleaning things up.
Right, now, back to slashing entourage by 60%. A great gesture and a good beginning, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. Where are the line items we should be focusing when we're looking at trimming our budget?
They are all over the place. Entourage is just one. When you look at those, and it goes beyond the president, I hope we're looking at that. Even the ministers, even the way some local government chairmen move around with siren and entourage as well. All those things are being put on the bill of the government. So if we even take COP28, federal government is saying, out of these 1,400 people, 422 are my own. Who owns the rest? There will be private sector, which might not be more than 200. Then you have the states as well, contributing to all of that. So our focus must go beyond just the federal government. It must also go into all the levels of governance. Apart from that, we're talking about the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. Who says that some of the things that happen in that place is not happening in other MDAs? The ease with which a minister or senior public officers can move money is scary and worrisome. From my background, that is a total breakdown of internal control, zero internal control, that makes it possible for those people in charge of those funds to be able to move them with so much ease. We're talking of billions. And look at what is going on. So where is the control? It is either not there at all, or it has totally failed. So it's a challenge on the financial management system of the federal government to say, this thing is not working. What can we do? Because the kind of leakage we're talking about, if in a ministry, we've heard of a 400 and something, we heard of a 3 billion, we heard of a 30 billion in one ministry. The question is, what is going on in the other 400 ministries and departments and agencies? I don't know how many. I'm just throwing numbers out there. Could it be that if we are able to block leakages, we might actually have more money on the table to transform this economy or to do more for this economy? There are two levels of poverty that Nigeria is struggling with as far as revenue is concerned. One is the fact that the revenue itself is tiny. It is small. So you look at Nigeria's total budget, and it is just about 25% of South Africa. So you're asking yourself, what is going on here? You say you are the biggest economy in Africa. How come that the retained revenue for the federal government is about 25% of what South Africa with 60 million people is doing? The second level is that this tiny revenue, how do we spend it? What do we spend it on? So those two levels are things that the president would need to pay attention to if he's going to change this situation.
Well, since excuse me, since we saw this review, of course, that you came to discuss, has generated some optimism in you. And
yes,
some
I'm optimistic.
In some, do you anticipate that we might see some review in some other areas of spending, that were criticized in the past, whether it was like the purchase of the yacht or whatever? Would you like to see that also happen, since we're doing some backtrack here?
I would like to see that happen. The purchase of the yacht is a transaction that has started even before this administration. Mm-hmm. But that is not the issue. The issue is the fact that that kind of a transaction even happened at all. So I'm asking myself, when I look at the personality of Buhari, does he really want to buy a yacht? My question will be no. I don't see that man being interested in buying a yacht. To do what? To sell to Daura or where? So most likely there are some other people out there who push all these things, and they find ways to plug them here and there. Okay, I don't want to go to the 1.2 trillion
Go there, go.
Our budget process needs to totally change. A budget is a planning document. But as it is today in Nigeria, it is essentially an authority to spend. It needs to go beyond an authority to spend and become a planning document.
On that note, can we afford our budget? Because this is another conversation that's happening. It's one thing for us to come up with this budget. It's another thing for us to realistically look at it and say, yes, all nations borrow. But can we afford to borrow at the rate we're borrowing? And as you said earlier, are we putting our best foot forward when we represent ourselves as we are borrowing? Because more often than not, we're looking like massive consumers, as opposed to people who are really serious about productivity and bolstering the economy. So can we afford our budget?
It will depend on what we do. The problem with our borrowing situation does not have a microwave solution. So somebody must be able to take a look into 3-4 years ahead and plan and begin to reduce that borrowing, reduce and replace it with our own homegrown revenue rather than borrowing. But that will not happen in 3 months or 6 months. It's going to take a time. And the people will also be involved. Can we get more involved in what is going on with the budget in itself? As NGOs, as some individuals. A very good example was what one of the contestants for Guba in Lagos, Mr. Doherty, did at some point when he went in to review certain expenses of Lagos State and wrote a letter to the governor and said, this thing and this thing and this thing, they don't look right. It's just a citizen. More people need to take steps like that to keep government on its toe for better performance.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Thank you for that wonderful analysis. Hopefully, they'll get you involved in this performance review that's coming up this month. Thank you so much, developmental economist Gbolahan Olojede. It's been a pleasure having you on Newsday. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.